guys, welcome to Bastion Time. I'm your host Bastion. This is Nintendo News. Let's get to some Nintendo news. First of all, Bravely Default. I can't stop talking about this game because I'm currently playing it and it's amazing, and it's the best Final Fantasy game I've played possibly ever. But in any case, a sequel is already well into development. In fact, I think it's pretty close to being done and will release in Japan not too long from now. An official release date has not been announced as far as I'm aware. But as far as whether that sequel will come to overseas, the answer looks like yes. Apparently, the Bravely Default team said, well, if the first game sells well overseas, then yeah, we'll go ahead and do a localization for the second game. The first game is selling like hotcakes, so great, now I'm hungry for hotcakes. But in any case, it's selling really well. We're going to get the sequel, it's going to be great. All I know about the sequel is that it takes place like 10 or 15 years after the first game, which is kind of unusual because usually in Final Fantasy games, which Bravely Default basically is, each game takes place in like a different world, really, so it'll be interesting to be playing a game in that same world again. I'm not super far into the game. I think I'm only about halfway right now, and it's all that I ever wanted from a Final Fantasy game. Our next story is about a Microsoft exec named Spencer. He's sort of famous to the Microsoft set out there, and he said some interesting things in a recent article about sort of anti-fanboyism, talking about how he thinks it's not really healthy for video games, for consoles really, to have certain people who are obsessed with only that specific console. He says he himself does own a Wii U and does play games on his Wii U, and doesn't think that that's weird at all. He feels like it makes perfect sense to own various consoles. I mean, sure, it makes sense, but it's expensive, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the major reason why there is this fanboyism. If consoles were super cheap and everybody could just own all of them without any care in the world, then I'm sure we would all own all the consoles and there wouldn't be all of this sort of taking sides, Microsoft versus Sony versus Nintendo kind of mentality. But the simple fact that you've kind of got to choose between one or the other, is going to create some kind of team rivalry. So, of course, what he's talking about is that people are taking that rivalry a bit too far. Back in my day, when I was a wee lad, we had Nintendo versus Sega, and it was nothing like it is today. I mean, sure, there were kids who would like tease. You'd like, Nintendo was the winner, so if you had a friend who had a Sega, you'd like tease them like, oh, I don't have a real video game console, but it was just good-hearted fun, I would think, whereas these days it's like, I get the impression that these days you're basically ridiculed mercilessly if you got a Nintendo console, because then you're a baby. But in any case, that's it for this episode. See you guys later on today from our Zelda news. See you tomorrow for more Nintendo news. Bye, guys.